The MCU has been a massive success since its inception with Iron Man in 2008, bringing iconic characters with the Avengers, Spider-Man, Black Panther, and the Guardians of the Galaxy, just to name a few, to the big screen. But as the new phase of Marvel kicks off, fans are eagerly anticipating the arrival of a very much beloved group of heroes that have yet to make their MCU debut. That being the X-Men. Ever since Disney's purchase of 20th Century Fox and finally regaining the rights to the Fantastic Four and X-Men characters, fans alike have been waiting years to see how the Marvel Cinematic Universe will implement mutants in an impactful way that will change the status quo of the universe. From their origins in the comics to previous cinematic incarnations with the Fox universe, we'll examine what makes these mutants so special and how they'll fit into the ever-expanding MCU. We'll discuss potential storylines and how the X-Men could impact the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward, which there's a lot of unpack here, so let's get started. It's going to be interesting to see how Kevin Feige and company are really going to finally introduce us to the main Earth 616 versions of mutants in the X-Men. It would be tricky to do so since there's literally been no mention of the X gene or iconic mutant characters other than the ending of Ms. Marvel when Bruno discovered Kamala Khan has a mutation in her DNA with the 90s X-Men theme playing in the background faintly.
Kamala, there's something different in your genes, like a mutation.
I need that! I fucking need that! Post-haste! Lickety split! I need that!
The only significant ties to the X-Men, or even the Fantastic Four for that matter, is in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, in which Stephen Strange entered Earth 838, and we saw the Illuminati featuring Reed Richards and Patrick Stewart's Professor X. With all that in mind, there are gigantic questions that arise from all this, kind of like how will the main MCU finally implement the X-Men and how come we haven't seen them yet. As of right now, the only mutant characters in the Earth 616 reality that we know of are Namor the Submariner and Kamala Khan.
My mother gave birth to me there, and I became the firstborn son of Talocan. Man gave me wings on my ankles and ears that pointed to the clouds. I was a mutant.
There's been massive speculation, discussions, and rumors as to how the MCU will portray mutant characters. Deadpool 3 is slated for a late 2024 release date, with Hugh Jackman returning to the role of Wolverine. Now, with Disney already owning the rights to mutant characters, it doesn't make sense for Marvel to only use the actors who played them previously in the Fox universe, right? Well, there was a rumor surfacing around a while back stating how Marvel contractually cannot recast any X-Men characters until after 2025 due to previous actor contracts held by Fox. If this indeed is the case, it would actually make a lot of sense. It would explain why we haven't seen any main MCU versions of the X-Men. Now, when it comes to diving deeper in mutant lore, there's the possibility that Marvel will do what they did with the Eternals and state how mutants were just hiding this entire time and chose not to interfere with major events like, with Infinity War and Endgame. I feel like the only way to make this make sense is to kind of have the mutant population sort of scarce and become somewhat of a new thing after the events of Endgame. There's always that fun fan theory that the events of the blip sort of sparked the activation of the mutant gene, thus, increasing the mutant population in quick succession and explain the absence of mutants. However, it doesn't seem like Marvel's gonna go with that idea, as mutants like Namor exist before the events of any Avengers film happening, and Kamala Khan's mutant gene doesn't seem to have any ties to the events of said blip. There's also the question of explaining the existence of mutants who are much older than Marvel characters and have been here for a while, like James Howlett Logan, Mr. Sinister, or even like ancient mutant deities like Apocalypse. That being said, there is one method of integrating mutants into the MCU that I strongly believe the writers will most definitely use, that being with the ramifications of Avengers Secret Wars. Avengers Secret Wars is the second Avengers film in Phase 6 and serves as the epic crossover in which the multiverse saga in the MCU with Kang the Conqueror has always been leading towards, following the events of Avengers The Kang Dynasty. The film is currently slated for a May 2026 release, and with the film taking inspiration from Jonathan Hickman's 2015 Secret Wars event from Marvel Comics, the MCU will most likely use the ramifications of Secret Wars to bring mutants into the main timeline. This is backed up in Multiverse of Madness, with Reed Richards stating the consequences of multiversal incursions, which is a major plot point in the Avengers Secret Wars event in the comics.
Your arrival here confuses and destabilizes reality. The larger the footprint you leave behind, the greater the risk of an incursion.
Incursion?
An incursion occurs when the boundary between two universes erodes, destroying one or both entirely.
And the only Earth that we know of that has mutants like Charles Xavier is Earth 838, which we saw in Multiverse of Madness. What I could see Marvel doing is use Avengers Secret Wars as a means of a soft reboot-esque kind of, or shake up the current MCU continuity to combine characters from other universes into the main Earth 616 reality. It could effectively explain the emergence of the mutant population, and will most definitely get an official X-Men film after the events of Secret Wars and Phase 6. The film could also be used as a means to bring in any Fox X-Men characters or actors that they would like to integrate into the film to really satisfy the lust for cameos when it comes to like MCU normies or whatever. And with the integration of the Fox X-Men characters in mind, Deadpool 3 could also do something with that universe to help make a smooth transition into the MCU version of mutants. Sometime last year, Ryan Reynolds confirmed that Hugh Jackman will reprise his role as Wolverine in Deadpool 3, which is slated to release November 8th, 2024, and be the kickoff for Phase 6. Now we know for a fact that the movie will include the TVA in some capacity, as the character of Mobius from the Loki series will make an appearance in the film. Most likely, Deadpool will use the time-traveling device from Deadpool 2 to somehow end up in the Marvel Universe, but I've heard a really interesting theory that Deadpool 3 could be like Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe storyline from the comics, but instead it's with the Fox Universe, so it would essentially be Deadpool kills the Fox Universe kind of beat. And I doubt that they would do this though, but a content creator named Koi, from like the Koi's Comic Corner at Real Rejects, made a really interesting theory on how the MCU could implement this idea.
This, my dear viewers, is going to be Deadpool kills the Fox universe. I do know I was one of the very first to suggest Deadpool killing the Fox universe, because I did talk with Rob Liefeld about it very, very, very long time ago. And then again, we did talk about it in the lockdown. What's been interesting is I think this story has changed and developed over the course of time because of the way this merger has gone. So what I think this is going to do is go back to Deadpool 2. It's going to start with Deadpool in the Fox universe. He's going to be living his day-to-day life. He might be doing some time turner hijinks. I would love for this to kick off right where the post-credits scene did. In that continuity in Deadpool 2, he's using the time turner to clean up a lot of fun Ryan Reynolds-y things, and he even fights a bygone Wolverine. That's why I think we're getting a different Wolverine than the one in Logan.
If you guys want to hear more about his thoughts and theories on that, I'll leave the original video in the description down below. Delving into the future of the MCU post Secret Wars and after Phase 6, it would be the golden opportunity to have the X-Men and mutant characters be the focus of the universe going forward. One of the biggest criticisms going around when it comes to Phase 4 and 5 of the MCU is the lack of focus on particular characters that had the star power of, like, let's say RDJ's Iron Man and Chris Evans' Captain America. Throughout the Infinity Saga, it was clear as day that the Avengers cast were essentially the main characters of the MCU, and ever since the events of Avengers Endgame, the MCU has yet to pick a set of characters for us as an audience to really lean heavily on emotionally and have us go through a significant character arc to the degree of the main 6 Avengers. So with the introduction of the X-Men, it would be best to have them, and perhaps even the Fantastic Four, be the new focus of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and build significant stories around them and their villains. Like, let's say if they wanted to, for the sake of longevity, they could take some inspiration from the X-Men Evolution cartoon, in which you had iconic X-Men characters like Jean Grey, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, and Kitty Pryde, but the difference being is that they were a lot younger and they were pretty much just teenagers. Marvel doesn't have to go this route, but knowing how much Marvel likes to implement much younger characters into their mythos ever since Phase 4 kind of started, I could see them casting much younger for like the first class of potential X-Men characters. As you know, we've had the Infinity Saga with Thanos currently in the Multiverse Saga, and in the future, like let's say like the next 3 to 4 phases of the MCU after Secret Wars could essentially serve as the Mutant Saga for Marvel. When it comes to any casting for the X-Men, I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. I know absolutely nothing about how to do fan casts, nor do I have the knowledge of Hollywood actors to do so, but There is a set of videos from Nano V Movies I would highly recommend checking out, as he does a really good job of running down the true characters and personalities of certain X-Men characters, and the types of actors Marvel should be looking for. So be sure to check out one of his videos, which I will also leave in the description down below as well. And with that, there's the potential and possibility of taking iconic X-Men storylines like the Phoenix Saga or Days of Future Past and giving them enough breathing room to properly adapt them into the big screen. Now obviously when it comes to adapting the X-Men, the MCU really has to go out of their way to give us a much more comic accurate X-Men that's willing to embrace the source material when it comes to storytelling and the team's overall visual aesthetic.
You actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
Yeah, I would actually. Properly adapting the X-Men not only puts the future of the MCU in a positive light, but it also helps it stand apart from the Fox Universe version of the X-Men. One of the biggest issues with the Fox Universe was the lack of cohesion with the confusing timelines, especially after like Days of Future Past and then like the movies leading with like Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix. Not to mention the fact that the lack of build-up and pacing to correctly adapt stories like the Dark Phoenix saga. Like, bruh, these people somehow managed to mess up like the most iconic X-Men storyline, not once, but twice.
What the fuck is wrong with you niggas?
But with Marvel's decent track record with building up to like the Infinity Saga with Thanos, I'd say they have what it takes to not only adapt stories, but properly implement iconic X-Men villains as well. The X-Men have been always known for their iconic roster of heroes, but they've also had some of the most memorable villains in all of comic book history. From Magneto to Apocalypse, the X-Men have faced off against some of the most powerful and menacing villains in the entire Marvel universe. So it's only a matter of time before we see these villains brought to life on the big screen once again, but hopefully done properly this time. When it comes to Magneto, I'd say the Fox universe did a pretty decent job with him, especially when it comes to the performances from both Ian McKellen and Michael Fassbender. It's a shame I can't really say the same for the majority of the rest of iconic X-Men villains brought to the silver screen, because characters like Mystique were pretty cool up until X-Men Apocalypse, because I guess Jennifer Lawrence kind of just gave up after Days of Future Past.
And by the way, the women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to X-Women.
Yeah, that character just fell off after a while. Some other appearances include the Hellfire Club with Sebastian Shaw and like Azazel, a version of Silver Samurai, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants alongside Magneto with characters like Toad and Sabretooth, just to name a few, Lady Deathstrike, William Stryker, the Sentinels, you name it. But like I said earlier, a lot of these renditions of those characters just feel sort of half-baked, with some of them just literally dying off in the same movies that they were introduced in. So with that all in mind, it's crucial for the MCU to implement iconic villains in a way that not only feels organic, but more importantly takes their time with setting up villains and just straight up keeping them around a little while longer. Just imagine seeing like a comic book accurate take on like the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, Mr. Sinister, Omega Red, the Hellfire Club, and maybe an even actual good depiction of Apocalypse. Someone like Magneto's presence in the MCU could have a significant impact on the franchise, his ideologies and methods often putting him against, the odds of other heroes, and his actions could have ripple effects that extend far beyond the X-Men franchise. Another example could be with the Hellfire Club serving as a group of wealthy and influential mutants who seek to dominate the world. Could be a different kind of villain than the likes of Magneto and Apocalypse, but their presence in the MCU could be just as impactful. The Hellfire Club's influence and resources could have major implications for the Marvel Cinematic Universe as they seek to use their power and wealth to further their own goals. And with their ties to various Marvel characters, their arrival in the MCU could have ripple effects just straight up throughout the entire franchise. So there you have it. The X-Men have set to making a massive appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and their grand mythos will most definitely play a major role in shaping the future of Marvel Universe. With their complex motivations and ideologies, the X-Men villains offer a wealth of storytelling possibilities that could have massive ramifications on the well-being of the MCU. As the MCU continues to evolve, it's exciting to think about the potential for new storylines, characters, and conflicts that the X-Men and their villains could bring to the table. Hey, are you excited to see the X-Men and their villains brought into the Marvel Cinematic Universe? And what storylines and characters are you most looking forward to seeing? Whatever it might be, let's just hope that the writers at Marvel will give the respect and highlight to the X-Men that they deserve.